Greetings, hello and welcome back to some more class guides for Long War of the Chosen. Today we're going to be looking at the Shinobi, and we're going to have three different Shinobi builds that we're going to be looking at, which is the Stealth Shinobi, the Blade Shinobi, and the Shooty Shinobi, something like that. Anyway, starting off with the Blade Shinobi, and when in the last video I said holo targeting sharpshooter is a very straightforward thing, well, do I have a surprise for you. Blade Shinobi is about as straightforward as that. You go into this Kenshi row and you just pick all the perks, you're done. End of the class guide. So let's talk a bit about the individual choices and also about the role of this Shinobi. So generally, as Shinobis start with Phantom, they're your default scouting unit. So they run across the map, find enemy groups, and allow your squad to engage them in a favorable position. Then, either when things go wrong or when you feel like it, you break your concealment and you murder everybody with your sword. So on the standard covert action, extremely light mission, right? You would probably scout with your Shinobi. The first group gets obliterated by your stealth ambush with a flamethrower, trench gun, what have you. The second group gets killed because you're in stealth, you have the advantage, you scout them, and in the third group he comes out of stealth, slices a guy or two, and you just murder the rest. So that's kind of how your typical mission with a Shinobi goes. And so while scouting is an important part here, being able to actually get some killing in is probably just as good. So to get that killing in, Blade Master, extra damage with your sword, plus 10 aim, that really puts you up there to almost always, unless they are very strong defensive enemies, you getting close to 100 aim, depending on your starting aim. Generally, I would say 60 or higher for a rookie should be the Shinobi starting aim. I wouldn't go below 60. A little bit higher is better. You don't want to miss those early game slices. You do get, I think, 20 aim from your weapon, from a sword. You get 10 aim once you pick up Blade Master. That kind of puts you, additional with the grace band, if you have 60 base aim, that puts you at 100 to not miss. You want to be in a situation though where you also don't grace. So that can be then achieved by either picking up concentration, if you're lucky enough to have that in the XCOM row, or just getting a little bit more aim. Like with 83 aim here, I think this is a very solid choice. Combatives. Let's talk for a second about how combatives works, because the description is not super helpful, where it says you may parry melee attacks and counterattack with a melee weapon. So the way this works is, first of all, most important thing is this only works on the enemy turn. It does not work on the XCOM turn. So important example there is the borrowed chrysalids. They unborrow, they attack you, you cannot parry that attack if it's on the XCOM turn. On the alien turn, if an alien attacks you in melee and their attack misses or is a grace, so is dodged, you instead parry that attack and perform a counter attack. Combative, that's what combative does. It also gives you 90% dodge against the first attack that hits you each turn. So often people say it only works against the first attack. Yeah, because you get this 90% additional dodge, plus 10 dodge you get from the skill itself, and unless the enemy has any sort of crit chance, that should be a guaranteed parry on the first attack, but after that you're a bit RNG related here, so you may or may not parry it. So if you have high dodge, outside of that, you might parry additional attacks per turn. Next thing to know is, when you're fighting Lost, the Lost basically move and attack as a single unit. So even if you have 8 Lost standing against you, you will parry all of them because they attack as a single attack. It's kind of the way the game works. A little bit unintuitive, but that's the way it works. So that all makes combatives a really strong perk already. But there's also some enemies where the AI works in a way that they prefer melee attacks, and you can this way completely shut them down. Most importantly, any mutants, if you're standing next to them, they will melee you over anything else for 1 turn, because their attack has a cooldown. So they can used to be able in Long War 2, you could just park a Shinobi next to a Mutant Elite and forget about that Mutant Elite for 5 turns. In Long War of the Chosen, the melee attack of the mutants has a cooldown, so you better find a solution for turn 2 and onwards. But for turn 1, you can just shut them down by parking a Shinobi next to them. Same is true for Andromedons. They will, both versions, so the main version and the phase 2 version of Andromedon, if they have someone standing next to them, they will attack that target. So you can completely shut them down. Next enemy you can shut down, Archon. If you do some damage to an Archon and they go into an enrage mode, it means they will prioritize melee attacks. So enrage them, park someone next to them with combatives, you shut them down. There's also other enemies then that you can kind of shut down, but not really. Stun Lancers, their targeting is a little bit wonky and you don't know who they're gonna attack, so it's unreliable. Chrysalids, same thing. You can't guarantee that they will go for you, but if they go for you, you parry them and all is good. What else do we have? Gatekeepers actually have a melee attack. If they are injured, they might use their tentacles to attack someone in melee and drain health from them. So you can actually park a combative Shinobi next to a gatekeeper, next to an injured gatekeeper, and if they do that attack, you just parry them and laugh. I'm just not 100% sure if they're guaranteed to do this if they're injured or if there needs to be a certain threshold. It's kind of a thing I haven't tested it enough, because you don't want to be testing stuff against the gatekeeper. I forgot, Berserkers. Once again, if you punch them a bit, they should always attack the nearest target, and so if you just park a Shinobi next to them, completely shut down with combatives. This is why combatives is such a strong perk on the Shinobi. In the Gunner video, I talked a little bit about why I don't take it on Gunners. I still think, though, even on Gunners it's a good choice, just not my first pick. But on a Shinobi, always pick combatives. And we're gonna come back to that in a second when we look at the Shooty Shinobi, because, sometimes people don't pick it and they regret that. Anyway, moving on now. Sergeant rank, Cutthroat. You ignore armor against enemies, against biological enemies. 15% additional crit chance, 2 additional crit damage. More damage on melee attacks is just good. The armor ignore part is what really shines, and that really helps cleaning up stuff like what are they called? Shield bearers. Yeah, shield bearers, the big armor targets. Careful, you might think, armored target purifiers have a lot of armor. Yeah, but they also have a 50-50 chance to blow up in your face when they die. So careful with that. Blade Storm. This is pretty much the only talent row where I was for a second considering putting a blue box between low profile, because Blade Storm did receive a significant nerf in Long War of the Chosen, as in it only triggers on the alien turn. It no longer triggers on the XCOM turn. One of my favorite things to do used to be to move a Shinobi in the middle of an unactivated enemy group and Blade Storm down everybody who moves. That's no longer possible. Bladestorm activations are not a thing anymore. So it kind of loses a little bit of its value, or rather a lot of its value. You still, like, if you are using combatives to like shut down a muton, you will trigger a Bladestorm attack from your side to punch the enemy, and then you parry their attack and punch them again. So you kind of double dip on this whole locking enemies down with combatives business. So it still makes Bladestorm my first choice here and a solid pick. It just used to be even better. Reaper. Activate it and kill multiple enemies per turn. You do get your actions refunded, so you can kill, but additional attacks get reduced damage, and that's actually significant, and it's falling off quickly. So whenever you intend to use Reaper, you have, like, let's say there's 8 fairly injured enemies, look exactly at the order in which you want to kill them. I want to say anything beyond 4 enemies needs to be pretty much at 1 HP, or you will not be able to kill them. So keep an eye out on the targeting thing in the middle of your screen and what the damage prediction is, because the damage fall off is quick. On that note also, we should very briefly go back to the base ability of Flash. The attack action with your sword. You get additional damage for every 4 tiles that you moved. I have a full video on how exactly that works, how that is calculated, in my tutorial series on my channel. So if you look at the Long War 2, Long War of the Chosen tutorials, there's a Flash video. Short version is, this distance is calculated from your starting position at the start of this turn. So if you're in a Reaper chain and you're going from A to B to C to D, it always checks that new target that you're taking. How far away is that target actually from where you started your turn? So you don't have to worry about choosing the maximum distance between target C and target D. They can be next to each other. You still get the full bonus based on your starting position in that turn. But that also means, like, if there was someone close to your starting position and you thought, oh, I'll just keep that guy for the last, like, you know, on my way back I kill him, you get a fairly low damage bonus only on that. What's good to know about Reaper is, if you fail to kill a target, you can receive a command from your officer and basically continue where you left off. So Reaper is still gonna be active, but that also means the damage reduction is active still. Moving on. Whirlwind is a big game changer, and it makes you so much more safe when you go in there to slice an enemy. So as long as you hit, and really with your aim, and especially if you pick up stuff like concentration stuff, well, I mean, concentration doesn't help you when you miss, but anyway, if you hit, you get a bonus move. So you can run out there, attack an enemy, potentially kill them, and get back to safety. Important note is, this only triggers once per turn. So if you have Reaper and you're attacking multiple enemies, after the first kill you get the bonus action from Reaper and the bonus move from Whirlwind. So you get a full movement distance again for the second kill. After that, Whirlwind doesn't trigger again. And finally, actually, you know, I should have totally put a blue box around conceal. Scouting is still one of your jobs. Being able to reconceal and scout again after being active is a strong ability. I just personally, you know, if I'm already in my blood frenzy of slicing up people, I want to be able to do that even better. So CDJ is my first choice here. Additional aim, additional crit, and additional damage against disoriented, stunned, or panicky enemies. So, you know, you have your support grenadier throw in a flashbang or even a sting grenade. Enemies are stunned or disoriented. You just pop Reaper and clean them all up. So that's really where this shines. You get a lot of extra crit damage. Super strong. Again, conceal is a viable second choice. Like, maybe you're not running with support grenadiers anyway, so you're not going to be looking at disoriented or stunned enemies, or maybe you just rely much more on that scouting. Then finally, my officer rating for Blade Shinobi is 3 out of 5. So there is this whole aspect of it gives them something to do while they're in stealth and scouting, and that's a valid choice, right? You're concealed, you can hand out commands and stuff, and let the rest of your squad perform better. Maybe even a non-officer would have to come out of stealth and slice somebody, while the officer can just give somebody a command and let them handle the situation on their own. And that being said, when the inevitable shit hits the fan, you want your shinobi to probably pop the Reaper and go in there and slice people, and so you don't have the officer. More often than not, I end up in a situation where I don't get that fourth kill on the Reaper chain, and then my officer needs to rescue the shinobi with a command. So he's more often than not on the receiving end of a command than rather giving it out. So it's a viable officer choice, but certainly not my first pick, and I think you can be in situations where you'd rather have them be the target of officer actions rather than the initiator. Right, then let's have a quick look at, let me just disable that. PCS, there's a variety of choices. You can always go for more mobility, which is nice. Agility and dodge keeps you alive, improves the way combatives works. There's something to be said about picking up defense PCS, maybe health PCS, smart macrophages to make you immune to poison, etc. So a lot of different choices. I don't think there's anything particular that you want to pick up. To me, it's a little bit of the leftover choice. You know, I said speed PCS might be nice, but honestly, my speed PCS goes to my Reaper and my Assault's first pick, and there's probably no leftovers for the Shinobis. Loadout, fairly straightforward. The best sword you can get, because you're a Blade Shinobi, you want to be killing stuff. Then an SMG type weapon for increased mobility, reduced detection radius. Most of the game this is gonna look like this, because you're just not gonna be taking shots. Just take the ballistic SMG and be happy with it, and if you want to do damage, you're gonna use the fusion blade. So again, this is from a safe game here, where I'm basically preparing for the final mission, and I'm running then a subcoiler, so not even a plasma SMG, because it's really hand-me-downs the weapons for the Shinobis. Best boss plating, because eventually you're gonna get revealed, you're gonna be slicing fools, you're gonna be close to the enemy. Nanoscale vest. It's kind of the first vest you unlock in the game, and you use it all game long. The big thing is here minus 25 crit chance reduction. If you remember what I said about combatives, as long as you dodge the attack or the enemy misses the attack, you parry it. The only way they can overcome your dodge in a way is if they are able to crit you. So using that 25% crit reduction makes sure that this cannot happen. You can still be flank crit by a shot, but nobody can crit you in melee, and so they cannot overpower your combatives. So for me, nanoscale is the moment I unlock it until the final mission, all my Shinobis run with nanoscale vests. Other slots, very often for me the medkit, just to make you immune to poison, because poison shuts you down hard, both in mobility and aim penalties. Also, of course, as a stealth person, it's nice to have an extra sort of stabilization, etc. in there. Alternatively, sometimes I like to use red screen rounds, as in, hey, if occasionally I need to take a shot, I can disable or rather reduce the hack defense of a mechanical enemy and help a little bit in that way. But more often than not, it's really just gonna be a medkit here. Smoke grenade can also work, etc. It's like not a huge priority, but I think it's a good thing to have. You might also leave it empty depending on your mobility. Talking about starting stats, I mentioned 60 aim is for me like the lowest I would go, but I have no problem taking like slightly, so 65 is average, like, you know, between 60 and 65 is totally fine. You can also go higher than that, that's not a problem. So they can make use of the aim, just not as much as other classes. Mobility, a lot of people favor high mobility shinobis because you want to be able to reach that target. Most of the time you're going to be scouting slightly ahead of the squad anyway, so you're fairly close. You get extra mobility from because you only run with an SMG, not with a rifle, so it's not a huge priority. I would have my concerns though if you have a 13 mobility rookie. That would be a little bit concerning for Shinobi, but 14, 15 is totally fine. Positive dodge is a plus, but you also, you get a bunch of dodge from your abilities. If you also have a dead dodge PCS, then the dodge value of your rookie is not that important. Yeah, right. So that's the Blade Shinobi. Let's move on to the Stealth Shinobi. Here we are, Stealth Shinobi, or I should say a Stealth Shinobi officer. If you're gonna train a Shinobi the stealthy way, make them an officer. That's the only reason to have them. So the Stealth Shinobi is basically has that one job of staying in stealth, scouting out enemy groups so that your own squad has an advantage in engaging them, and being an officer and using making liberal use of things like command, get some, focus fire, or whatever else abilities you have to enable them to kill the enemy. More often than not, your Stealth Shinobi might still be in stealth at the end of the mission, or thanks to conceal might again be in stealth. So they don't take many shots, they don't take many slices. It's not a build that you necessarily need to have. For me, in most campaigns, I build exactly one Stealth Shinobi, not more, not less, and also not fewer. And the main reason for that is basically network tower missions. For me, a Stealth Shinobi is like the one guy who's able to stealth all the way through the network tower, hack the console, everybody gets stunned, and then we just clean up the house. So a lot of my perk choices also really then come from that single mission, as weird as that sounds. It takes some getting used to really get enough value out of your Stealth Shinobi, because since they're gonna be in stealth, they're not gonna be fighting, they're not gonna be holo targeting and helping you that way, so you're kind of fighting with one man or woman down. So that makes it a little bit harder. So you should have a squad that actually takes advantage of having someone in stealth providing perfect intel. So either strong Overwatch classes where you can set up good ambushes for unactivated groups, or maybe a sniper or two that can just kill pods before they activate. So let's have a quick look at the individual perks. Starting off with Ghostwalker. Reduce detection range by 25% for 2 turns. That's really strong to reduce enemy detection range, as it says. So whenever you do some questionable moves, pop Ghostwalker first and you are very safe even like late game enemies have then, I don't know, 4 tiles detection range at most against you, so you can sneak around way better than anyone else. Just keep in mind that it's only for 2 turns. Yeah, don't end up in a situation where you're actually going to get revealed then when Ghostwalker drops off. Next perk is going to be combatives. If you have a shinobi, take combatives. Like, there's going to be situations where your stealth shinobi comes out of stealth to tank that muton elite or that regular muton or muton centurion or whatever other muton you might run into, and having combatives is just a requirement for that. That's just as much as maybe having shadow step might be nice. No, you want to have combatives. It's, for me, like, sometimes the good old joke of, oh, unfortunately on the corporal rank shinobis only have one choice, and that's what it boils down to. Alright, moving on. Covert, again, smaller detection radius is better. This gives you a permanent 25% reduction. Ghostwalker is an activated. In combination, these really shine and make your detection radius really small. One thing also to keep in mind, both Covert and Ghostwalker also reduce your infiltration time, so your squad's gonna have an easier time infiltrating with that stealthy officer. Next row, Staff Sergeant. My pick here is Blade Storm, again for the rare situations where you're gonna be combative tanking something, you get to double dip on the counter attack because of Blade Storm. There is something to be said about low profile. There's not much to be said about Shadow Strike. You don't really have a big attack. Like, it seems like a stealthy shinobi with conceal can use Shadow Strike twice per mission to pew with the SMG. It's just nah. Low profile might keep you alive. If you get revealed and you're sitting in a half cover position, questionable. Blade Storm, I think you get the most value out of it, even if it's not much value, considering what I said of finishing the mission still concealed. None of them helps in that case, so that helps a little bit. Hit and Run is my pick here on the Tech Sergeant row. Again, I was talking about the network tower missions, and in those missions, if you're then in that final room with the console that you just hacked, there's probably like 4 enemies or so in that final room with you that are all stunned, and then you have some time to wail on them, and Hit and Run gives you a little bit of extra damage that you can bring in there. So you could, like, let's say you start your turn next to a stunned snake, you slice one snake, you shoot one with Hit and Run, and then you slice again. Your sword is still going to be stronger than whatever weapon you're carrying, but you get a little bit of extra oomph out there. A tiny bit. Alternatively, since you're not really a combatant, pick evasive just to stay alive. It makes the first attack against you pretty much guaranteed a dodge. So a grace, so minimal damage. It can be nice considering you are an officer, you want to be out there as much as possible. You're spending already extra time in the officer training school, you don't want to be spending extra time in sickbay. So evasive is a good secondary choice. Gunnery Sergeant. My first pick here is Tradecraft. That reduces your infiltration time. So that kinda, I was saying, as a stealth officer, your squad is kind of fighting one man down, and with Tradecraft and the infiltration reductions from Covert and Ghostwalker, you can often fit in an extra person then. It's like, it's not gonna completely reduce your infiltration time for this soldier, but it reduces it so much that you might be able to squeeze in an extra soldier where other groups can't. So that's a good pick. Alternatively, Whirlwind. If you find yourself occasionally attacking, then being able to move away again with Whirlwind keeps you safer. Again, if you compare it with the previous Shinobi we're looking at, this one is sitting at 72 aim, the other one at 83. You don't have the extra aim from Blade Master, so Whirlwind requires you to hit, and you won't have a guaranteed hit chance here. So it's a little bit dicey. That's why I kind of prefer than just committing to the stealthy officer route and just picking tradecraft and having an extra person in the squad to make up for it. And finally, conceal. Being able to reconceal again and then keep scouting around with stealthy Ghostwalker, stealthy covert, it just has a lot of value. So being able to reconceal is just good, solid choice. Yeah, and yeah, officer rank 5 from 5. If you make a Stealth Shinobi, you make them an officer. And yeah, so I think then we can just briefly disable this, disable that. No, that's the wrong thing. There we go. And well, not much to say about equipment and perk choices, etc. I would say aim and mobility matter even less for a Shinobi officer. So you see like 14 mobility, you can even go 13. Like he's gonna be sitting in stealth, that's fine. I think that was also a below 60 aim rookie when he came out of Gatecrasher, so that's also fine. Agility PCS, yeah, since we had one left over, doesn't matter too much. Similarly, in the officer tree, you will not be taking lead by example because your aim is just not going to be high, so there's no point in taking that. Everything else, whatever you want to take, whatever your preferred choices. I don't think I talked too much about officer abilities, but general, the quick summary is up here, personal preference, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, whatever you want to pick, or everything works. Captain rank, your first 1 or 2 officers are going to be trial by fire, everyone else picks Gemma and forgets to use it during the mission. Major, lead by example only makes sense if you have a high aim officer that is usually just then the holobot sharpshooter, unless you roll a ridiculously high aim grenadier or something, which I had before, so then lead by example makes sense. Just don't accidentally click on collector, you're gonna regret it your whole campaign. Everybody else gets collector. Lieutenant Colonel, personal preference, I usually have fire discipline because I just prefer offensive perks. So in this case, Overwatch perk over defensive ones that occasionally give a little bit of defense. Colonel is always going to be infiltrator for everyone. Air controller, I don't know. I don't think anyone in the history of Long War has ever picked that. Maybe back in Long War 1.0 days when stealth missions, like 2 people stealth missions, were still a thing. Then air controller made a little bit of sense, but without that, infiltrator is just going to be so much better. And field commander is usually going to be combined arms for more damage. Scavenger is weird, like yeah, late game you are kind of low on alloys in delirium. That being said, with the chosen being there and providing steady donations of alloys in delirium whenever they show up, I think you can usually skip scavenger and take that extra damage on everyone. A very quick rundown of officer abilities, randomly in the 6th video of the class guide series. I don't know, just felt like quickly addressing that. Anyway, nothing much to be said about the gear. Again, since I have hit and run on this specific soldier, he actually gets a scram gun. Late game, he gets fusion blade. He should have a grappling suit. Grappling does allow you to grapple out of detection zones. So if you're stuck in a detection zone, you're behind cover, you're in this red detection tile, if you move you would be detected, you can grapple out of there to a rooftop that is not within the detection tile. You will not trigger the detection, you stay concealed. So grappling suit, super helpful for Stealth Shinobi. Nanoscale, same thing. combatives, needs nanoscale to really be 100% reliable. Some good plating, medkit makes sense. I wouldn't, yeah, medkit is probably the only thing that makes sense. Maybe a support grenade, but then you drop concealment, so that's kind of pointless. You have crap aim, so any sort of red screen ammo doesn't really help the team all that much if you're missing with that anyway. So yeah, it's again, it's a Stealth Shinobi. He's been on 27 missions and got barely more than 1 kill per mission. This is like support grenadier kind of levels of kill efficiency, but it's a huge asset to the team. It allows those flawless network tower missions to just go smoothly. You stun everything, you kill everything, you go home, and that's really a big value, and I would highly recommend trying that out. Alright, one more Shinobi variant in the way, and that's gonna be the Shooty Shinobi. Right, here we are with Mr. Shooty Shinobi guy, and you might spot something where the red square is around a talent that I haven't actually picked on this specific soldier. Look, it was a mistake, I regretted it, and you cannot really respec soldiers in any reasonable way in Long War of the Chosen or Long War 2. So anyway, let's talk about Shooty Shinobi. It's not necessarily a build you will have in every campaign, I want to say. It often, for me, it's a matter of getting someone randomly promoted to Shinobi who has exceptional aim, and where I say, hey, I want to do more with that. So in this case, with 90 aim at Master Sergeant and also 18 mobility, that's kind of then the situation where I want to be shooting stuff and not just occasionally slicing somebody with a sword. So in order to do that kind of shooting business, we're going to pick up a Lone Wolf for some extra aim. This is not somebody like this. Shooty Shinobi wants to be on the flanks of enemies, so you want to have them kind of away from the main part of the squad and take flank shots. Because skipping forward a little bit, Gunnery Sergeant, Hunter's Instincts, +2 damage on flank attacks. You want to be flank shooting enemies. Corporal, the only varied pick for every Shinobi is combatives. Like, no, this was a mistake. I regret this every day of my life. I even had a mission where I moved myself next to an Archon to tank him because I thought every Shinobi has combatives, and then the Archon smacked me over the face. Pick combatives. Don't do what I did here. This is bad. Boo. On the Sergeant row, the reason why I really like Covert for Shooty Shinobi is you're gonna be running with a proper rifle, right? At least that's in my opinion the better choice. So you have increased detection range compared to a Shinobi that runs with a SMG, like a Sword Shinobi. If you pick Covert, you actually switch that around. Covert plus rifle is less detection range than what a Blade Shinobi with his SMG has. So that allows you to still successfully fulfill your scouting role that every Shinobi has until you start shooting. So that's why Covert is a good pick, I think. Hard targets, you know, if you go on those risky flank maneuvers, you might get some extra dodge out of this and survive the whole situation, but I think it's too situational, and Covert is just universally good because you still have that job of scouting for enemies, right? Even though you have a lot of damage output as a Shooty Shinobi, if you can scout for the squad and enable them to take down the enemies without having to come out of stealth, do that. On the Staff Sergeant role, you might think, hey, you want to be shooting stuff, Shadow Strike seems good. The answer is it's not, because you don't really have an ability that is like a flashy ability. Like, what are you gonna do with your Shadow Strike? Take a single shot? Take a rapid fire? Well, if you rapid fire from Shadow, then this ends your turn. You're not taking advantage of hidden run or of your pistol skills, which we're going to come to in a second. So you don't really have an opener to use with Shadow Strike. Unless, I'm not really sure if there's any like Iron Curtain or something in the XCOM rows as a possible skill, but even then I would advise against Shadow Strike. You used to be able to use Face Off, the pistol skill, from concealment and with Shadow Strike, and it was ridiculous to a point where this interaction was removed. You cannot use Face Off from concealment anymore because it was so brokenly overpowered with Shadow Strike. So it kind of is a matter of it probably being overnerfed. Like, removing Face Off from concealment was the right choice, but then Shadow Strike should have been removed, changed with something else, like Center Mass or something here. That would really really work well for the Shinobi. That being said, if you see Center Mass on the XCOM roll, pick it up. More on that later. So since Shadow Strike is kind of useless, Blade Storm is my first choice. If you have combatives, again, the double dipping on the parry action with Blade Storm is just great. Low profile is a solid second choice to keep you safe in those flanking shooting positions. Since you're a Shooty Shinobi, you want to be shooting stuff. This is the Shooty perk, Hidden Run. You want to be taking flanks. If you shoot somebody from the flank, you get an extra shot. Fantastic. More shots is more better. And then more shots that hit harder is even betterer. So Hunter's Instincts, +2 damage. That's actually, it's like lethal what sharpshooters get in Master Sergeant. No, not assaults get it in Master Sergeant. It's +2 damage is really, really strong. So that's good. And ranged attacks against flanked enemies deal +2 damage. So it's not restricted to your primary weapon. It works with pistols. It works with the bloody X-throw, which is also a ranged attack. So +2 damage. And then, of course, since you're shooting, this is the only shooting perk, rapid fire. I talked about pistols, but I need to disable this, otherwise this looks weird when I scroll down. Pistol perks. I think I looked at this very little for any of the other classes. As a Shooty Shinobi, you want to pick up pistol perks because, as I just said, Hunter's Instincts, +2 damage on your ranged attacks, applies to pistols. So my usual minimum perk choice is Quick Draw, Lightning Hands, and Fanfire. If you have extra AP from your combat intelligence, you can pick up other stuff. This is still showing the old perk tree. This is Magnum in the current version of Longbow of the Chosen. I just never rebuilt this class. So instead of Return Fire, obviously. I'm like, these three are usually enough. Keep in mind, Magnum does not actually apply to your shots from Fanfire or from Lightning Hands, so it's not that great. But what this boils down to, in an ideal situation, so you start your turn in a flanking position against multiple enemies. What you can then do is Lightning Hands, Fanfire. This does not end your turn. Then you take a regular shot with Hit and Run, and then you take Rapid Fire Shot. Now, for those paying attention, those were 7 attack actions, each of them getting +2 damage from Hunter's Instinct. If you were lucky enough to roll Center Mass in the XCOM row, that's another +1 damage on each of those attacks, because that Center Mass also applies to pistol attacks. That's pretty much, I want to say, the highest damage output that you can have in the game, if all of these attacks hit, of course. And you need to have, well, you need to be flanking enemies, and you need to have enough targets for that, because this is just gonna murder every single target. So you wanna have 2 or 3 targets too, you know? One gets the fanfire, one gets the rapid fire, one gets the rest. Kind of situation. Yeah, that's a lot of damage output, and that's why I really like the Shooty Shinobi kind of approach. I would put them, I actually haven't prepared the officer rating. I want to say 2 out of 5. They can still do the whole, hey, at least I have something to do in stealth officer kind of thing. But most of the time they're gonna be off somewhere else, buggering off to the sides, so not really a good officer pick. But still better than some others. This could be an aim PCS that might help. This could be, in this case, it's a mobility PCS to get those flanks. So not the usual dodge PCS, something that just helps more with the abilities here. Again, it's a class you want to have high aim at the start, but for me it's more of a I rolled a shinobi that had high aim, not I turned someone who had high aim into a shinobi. Because if I have someone with high aim, they're probably gonna be a sharpshooter, gunner, or ranger. So more of an, you know, accidental kind of thing. Loadout. It's a grappling suit helps you to get those flanking abilities, but makes you fairly vulnerable. So it's a bit of a toss-up between a grappling suit and a proper armor. Probably depends on your mobility and also on what kind of map you're heading into. I really like my grappling suit, but that also means they spend a lot of time in sickbay. Best possible rifle you can get to get all this flank damage in. If you're playing with alien hunters, then the X throw does count, as far as I know, as a ranged attack, so gets +2 damage from Hunter's Instinct, so this is gonna be your X guy. Then of course the best possible pistol you can get, because you have the extra pistol skills. Nanoscale vest, because combatives, even if you forgot to pick it, and the best possible plating, and then some sort of ammo that increases your damage potential even more. In this case I'm going with Talon rounds. Again, I'm going to be flanking a bunch of enemies, that's 40% crit chance from the flank, +10 from Talon rounds. That's some additional good crit damage output. And yeah, as for weapon attachments, the usual stuff. I mean, okay, this is plasma, you have 4 slots on plasma, so that doesn't really matter, but yeah, it's gonna be scope, probably a magazine or an autoloader, and the rest doesn't really matter. I like using suppressors for the infiltration time reduction, but you can pick whatever you want, really. Well, stock doesn't make any sense. And yeah, that's the Shooty Shinobi class, and we're gonna have a very quick whiz over to the wiki to look at the XCOM role perks for Shinobis. Alright, here we are at the list. So it's a little bit tricky because doing this for the class as a whole, because it's kind of fairly different between especially the Shooty and the melee, the sword shinobi, because they kind of have different preferences. Like the Shooty Shinobi wants to pick up center mass the moment he sees it. The sword shinobi couldn't care less because this only affects guns. You know, sword is not a gun unless you have a very special sword. Similarly, everything that's shooting related, close combat specialist, close encounters, death from above, is just completely irrelevant to their sword shinobi. That being said, there are a few things that are universally good. Combat fitness, more mobility, more aim, more hit points. Well, unless you're a stealth shinobi. Well, even as a stealth shinobi, more mobility is nice and hit points is nice. Combat fitness is always nice to see. Bring them on is okay for more crit damage. I think both classes don't really do crit. Well, you know what? I was just saying this, the Shooty Shinobi should have 50% to crit on all flank shots, so that's some nice damage increase. Sword Shinobi, if they get CDG and Master Sergeant and have actually someone who can enable that, can get some nice extra damage out of that. What else do we have? Concentration, I think, is for me another must-have pickup, because it really removes grazes, and especially for the Sword Shinobi, it makes you less susceptible to, you know, grazing an enemy and then standing there. You don't want to be standing next to a First Sergeant or something like that, big late game strong shooter, who you just grazed and who's really angry at you and somehow still alive. You don't want that to happen. Concentration makes sure you don't graze, you just kill. What else? Dedication is good for, like, you know, war mod lightning reflexes, or rather shadow step, plus additional mobility. That's really nice to have. Anything related to grenades is probably crap. Flashbanger might see some use, but yeah. What else? Yes, again, lock and load, really good on a Shooty Shinobi. Complete garbage on the other guys. But I want to say with the Shooty Shinobi, I'm gonna run into lots of ammo issues all the time. So if you see lock and load, that's worth a pickup. Yeah, you can actually get Iron Curtain. Still probably wouldn't take Shadow Strike. So yeah. I did mention in the sharpshooter video that if you see disabling shot on another class, pick it up for the utility. I would kind of say questionable for the Shinobi, because you might not have the highest aim and you're probably still running around most of the time with an SMG. So actually landing that disabling shot might be tricky. Even the Shooty Shinobi, I would say, has a hard time justifying spending 40 AP on this, because you're already going to be spending lots of AP on the pistol skills. So I would probably not pick it up there. Lethal is okay for the shooter. Keep in mind, this does not. This is just applying to your primary weapon, does not apply to pistol damage, so it's not as important as center mass. Sorry. Everything else is a little bit situational, I want to say. Let me double check. There's not anything. Well, there's one thing. Lightning Slash. This is actually a fairly strong pickup. Keep in mind though, this is not flash. You do not get bonus damage for the tiles you moved, but it gives you, it's a free attack with your blue move, and then you can still follow it up with a proper flash attack for the bonus damage from the movement afterwards. So this is a strong pick for any sword guys. Yeah. And that for the shooty guy, well, everything that gives you aim is always nice. Impulse, if you moved, 10 aim crit, since you're going to be moving to flanks, is nice. Run gun is also nice. There's a lot of things for a Shooty Shinobi that really are nice to pick up. Even stuff like locked on, run gun, shredder to a certain extent. The problem you're really running into is you're gonna be picking up pistol perks, you're running out of AP as the Shooty Shinobi. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about these kind of perks. Again, make some choices based on what your main build is like. Like Infighter is actually fairly good for Sword Shinobi, because if you need dodge, you're probably gonna be within 4 tiles of those enemies. Less value for the shooter guy. Yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about those picks here. I don't think there's any huge trap picks actually for the Shinobi. It really comes down to how many points you have available, how many you're spending on other stuff, and then if you have leftover points, there's probably going to be something useful to pick up. You won't have leftover points though. Alright, so that's it for the Shinobi for today. Yeah, as I mentioned last time, there's just a few more. We're gonna finish the base classes, so we're gonna look at the Assault, and the Specialist I think is also still missing. And then we're gonna move over to the hero classes, and maybe I'll do a video on Sparks. Maybe not. We'll see. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.